There is a kind of seduction that doesn't rely on beauty, wealth, or charm alone, one that moves beneath the surface, whispering to the hidden corners of the human psyche. It's not about attraction in the conventional sense. It's about control, influence, power. The art of dark seduction is not for the faint of heart. It is a guide for those who dare to wield emotional manipulation with precision, to unmask raw desire, and to become a presence that others can't escape, even when you're no longer in the room. This book delves into the shadows of connection, where obsession is sculpted, vulnerabilities become weapons, and seduction is no longer a game. It's a strategy. If you've ever wanted to become unforgettable, irresistible, and dangerously magnetic, this is your invitation to step into the darkness and master the art. Before we dive into the dark secrets of irresistible power, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video if you're ready to unlock hidden desires, and share it with someone who dares to explore the shadows of seduction. Your support fuels this journey into the forbidden, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's begin. Chapter 1. Whispers in the Dark. The allure of forbidden attraction. There is a kind of silence that seduces more than any word ever spoken. A silence laced with mystery, tension, and the quiet certainty that once crossed, there is no returning. Within that silence lies the whispered promise of danger, the magnetic pull of the unknown. It is this tension, between desire and danger, between what is allowed and what is forbidden, that forms the foundation of dark seduction. Unlike the sweetness of romantic love or the playful tease of flirtation, dark seduction is an art form rooted in shadows. It dances with taboos, thrives on psychological tension, and taps into the primal parts of our psyche that long to touch what we are told to avoid. Like moths to flame, we are drawn to the forbidden, even when we know it may destroy us. But what is it about the forbidden that so deeply entices? And how does one master the art of evoking such dangerous desire? The allure of forbidden attraction stems from its ability to awaken our deepest and most hidden cravings. What society labels as off-limits often becomes the very thing we fantasize about. This is not simply because we are rebellious by nature, but because human desire is heightened by limitation. What is inaccessible becomes sacred, even erotic. Just as Eve reached for the fruit, not because of hunger but because of the thrill of defiance, we too are seduced not only by the object of our desire, but by the fire of transgression itself. The forbidden amplifies emotion. It creates a narrative, an internal drama where passion is painted in chiaroscuro, shadow and light, guilt and pleasure, restraint and surrender. Every touch, every glance becomes a gamble. This emotional theater is what gives dark seduction its unforgettable power. To understand the mechanics of dark seduction, we must think in terms of contrast. Just as painters use negative space to define their subjects, the seducer uses the unspoken, the implied, and the off-limits to stir the imagination. Mystery is not an accessory in this dance. It is the foundation. In an age obsessed with oversharing, mystery becomes a seductive anomaly, a subtle hesitation, a gaze that lingers a second too long, the deliberate withholding of information. These are not acts of avoidance but strategies of tension building. The dark seducer knows that what is hidden becomes magnetic. Just as the moon draws the tides without ever touching the ocean, the artful seducer draws the other closer through suggestion, not pursuit. Moreover, dark seduction operates within the realm of psychological asymmetry. It is never about equality. It is about control, but a control that masquerades as surrender. The seducer may seem passive, disinterested, even distant, but beneath that distance lies meticulous intent. Think of it as a game of chess where every move is calculated not to win outright, but to lead the opponent into making the first irreversible mistake. The allure lies in not knowing whether you're being chased or chasing, the moment you doubt, the moment you hesitate. The seducer has won. This uncertainty is the lifeblood of the game. Analogously, dark seduction can be likened to a spider weaving its web. not out of haste, but with precision and patience. The threads are spun from eye contact, ambiguity, delayed gratification, and emotional contrast. The prey, willing, curious, even hungry for meaning, steps closer with each step into the unknown, unaware that the seduction is not about consumption, but about the surrender of will. This is not manipulation in its crude form. It is orchestration. Like a composer arranging dissonant notes into a haunting melody, the dark seducer arranges moments of vulnerability, danger, and beauty into a symphony of temptation. And then there is the archetype, the figure of the dark seducer that echoes across time and culture. From Dracula's hypnotic charm to Cleopatra's regal enigma, from Hades luring Persephone into the underworld to the forbidden trysts in Gothic novels, we see the recurring pattern: the dangerous lover, the forbidden liaison, the shadow behind the curtain. These characters endure because they tap into something timeless: the idea that what we fear may also be what we secretly crave. The dark seducer does not present themselves as safe or reliable. They present themselves as thrilling, enigmatic, transformative. They promise not comfort, but transcendence. It is crucial to understand, however, that dark seduction is not inherently evil. To label it as such would be to oversimplify its complexity. It is, rather, a form of seduction that operates on emotional and psychological edges. It explores the thresholds between fear and desire, power and vulnerability, control and freedom. If romantic seduction is a garden bathed in sunlight, then dark seduction is a midnight forest, wild, unpredictable, but rich with secret life. Those who step into it do so at their own risk, but also with the possibility of discovering parts of themselves they never knew existed. That is the gift and the danger, that through surrender to the forbidden, one might awaken what had long slept in silence. But what makes this form of attraction so difficult to resist is its ability to bypass logic and speak directly to the unconscious. The dark seducer knows that the mind is a maze, and they walk through it with the precision of a dream architect. They appeal not to what you say you want, but to what your silence craves. They don't ask for love. They evoke obsession. They don't chase. They disappear. They don't declare their intentions. They let you create them in your own mind. The result is a projection of desire so intense it feels real, but is shaped entirely by the one being seduced. In this way, the dark seducer remains untouched by responsibility, yet unforgettable in memory. Let us not forget the role of fear in this seductive dynamic. Fear, when paired with desire, becomes a powerful accelerant. A relationship that feels dangerous, even slightly wrong, can be intoxicating precisely because it activates both adrenaline and oxytocin, the chemicals of both threat and attachment. It's like dancing at the edge of a cliff. You might fall, but the thrill of being close to the edge is what makes it irresistible. The dark seducer knows this, and uses emotional proximity and sudden withdrawal as tools to keep the dance alive. One moment you feel seen, the next abandoned. This disorientation creates longing. Longing creates obsession. And yet, dark seduction is not without a code. It thrives on awareness. Unlike manipulation, which seeks to deceive, dark seduction illuminates shadows that already exist. It doesn't create desire. It reveals it. It doesn't lie. It allows truths to emerge that are too dangerous to face in daylight. This is why many who fall under its spell often describe it as awakening or revelation. They don't feel tricked, they feel exposed. It is not a theft, it is a trade. The seducer offers intensity in exchange for innocence, transformation in exchange for safety, depth in exchange for peace. To master the art of dark seduction, one must first master their own darkness. You cannot lead another into the shadows if you are afraid of your own. This means confronting your motives, desires, and wounds. The seductive power you hold comes not from pretending to be flawless, but from being able to wear your flaws like silk. Vulnerability becomes a weapon when it is chosen, not begged for. Mystery becomes seductive when it is real, not performed. And restraint becomes irresistible when you show you are capable of complete abandon, yet choose not to. Self-control in this context is not repression. It is the ultimate aphrodisiac. Finally, let us speak of endings. Because every seduction, dark or otherwise, has its end, and it is often in the aftermath that the true nature of the seduction is revealed. Some emerge transformed, awakened, emboldened. Others emerge shattered, haunted, obsessed. That is, the risk. Dark seduction is not a safe game, but a dangerous ritual. And like all rituals, it demands something in return. Sometimes it's time, sometimes it's identity. Sometimes it's the ability to love again without remembering that one shadowed kiss, that one unforgettable whisper in the dark. In the end, the allure of forbidden attraction is not simply about breaking rules. It is about touching something ancient, primal and painfully beautiful within ourselves. It is the memory of fire, the ache of wings we once had, the need to step beyond the familiar and become something more than we are. Dark seduction invites us to walk that path, not with fear, but with reverence. Because beneath the shadows, if we dare to look closely, there lies not only danger, but the possibility of profound self-knowledge. And sometimes, to know ourselves, we must be willing to be undone, whispered into, called forth, and reborn in the dark. Chapter 2: The Mask of Charm, Crafting the Perfect Illusion. Charm is never what it seems. It is not honesty dressed in elegance, nor is it kindness adorned in silk. Real charm, the kind that disarms, seduces, and deceives, is a carefully constructed illusion, a mask so flawlessly worn that even its creator forgets it's not their face. It's the weapon of choice for those who seek to conquer without force, to be adored without question, to penetrate hearts not with swords but with smiles. The mask of charm is not about showing who you are. It's about becoming exactly what the other person most longs to see, a fantasy, a savior, a mirror. It is the art of being everything and nothing at once. At the heart of this illusion lies a paradox. The more artificial the performance, the more authentic it feels to the one being charmed. Why? Because charm does not speak to the rational mind. It speaks to longing. It doesn't appeal to logic but to wounds, dreams, and silent yearnings. The charming one knows how to enter that space between desire and need, the place where people stop asking questions and start believing. Belief, not truth, is the currency of the charmer. Crafting this illusion begins with listening, not to words but to silences. The skilled seducer observes the spaces in conversation, the emotional hesitations, the subtle flinches when a subject is touched. From these invisible signals they construct the ideal persona. If the target needs validation, the charmer becomes attentive and affirming. If they crave danger, the charmer adds an edge of recklessness. If they long to be understood, the charmer leans in, repeats their words back to them, and lets them feel seen. It is an emotional costume change done with such grace that the other never notices the zipper. This is not mimicry. It is psychological shape-shifting. The mask is not painted with lies but sculpted from selective truths. The charmer might truly enjoy your company, might genuinely laugh with you, but these moments are calibrated, measured, and offered like bait, not gifts. You feel chosen, special, elevated, not because you are truly seen, but because you are strategically reflected. The mask becomes a mirror, one that shows you not who the seducer is, but who you wish they were. And that, perhaps, is the most exquisite cruelty, to make you fall in love with your own projection. To understand this dynamic, imagine a stage play. The charmer is the lead actor, and you, the captivated audience. Every gesture, every inflection, every pause is rehearsed not to tell the truth, but to evoke feeling. Their presence has rhythm, their words a seductive cadence. They are not spontaneous, they are deliberate. But because their performance is intimate, personal, and emotionally tailored to you, it feels like fate. You forget it's theater. You begin to believe the mask is the face. And so, like a spellbound child watching shadows on the wall, you fall, not for the person, but for the illusion of depth, the artistry of the mask. Yet the most dangerous aspect of charm is its ability to inspire trust. True manipulation never comes dressed in menace. It arrives cloaked in familiarity. Charm evokes comfort, and comfort lowers defenses. The charming one will never demand your attention. They will simply make you feel seen in a way no one else has. That feeling, of being understood without explanation, becomes addictive. You open up, spill secrets, soften your edges. Not because you are weak, but because charm feels safe. And safety breeds vulnerability. Once you are emotionally naked, the game begins. But charm does not always aim to destroy. Sometimes it seduces for the thrill, for the artistry, for the intoxicating pleasure of being the puppeteer. To craft a mask so perfect that someone else gives you their soul, not out of fear but out of longing, is its own form of high. The charmer feeds not just on control, but on reverence. They do not want you merely compliant. They want you enamored. They want to become your addiction, your answer, your emotional compass. Because the greatest power is not domination, it is worship. What makes the mask of charm so untraceable is its elegance. Unlike brute force, it leaves no bruises. Unlike lies, it often includes enough truth to pass undetected. The charming manipulator never raises their voice. They whisper, they smile, they offer choices that all lead to the same destination, their control. And you follow, willingly, because it never feels like surrender. It feels like a beautiful dream you don't want to wake up from. However, wearing the mask of charm is not without cost. The charmer must remain forever unseen. To be truly loved, one must be known. And the charmer cannot afford that vulnerability. So they live in performance, in endless reinvention. Every new conquest requires a new character, a new backstory, a new illusion. They cannot rest. The applause must continue, and while they may be adored by many, they are intimately known by none. Their charm, though powerful, becomes their prison. In this way, the art of charm is both seductive and tragic. It offers connection without risk, attention without exposure, intimacy without truth. And yet behind every perfect illusion lies the aching truth of emptiness. Because to wear the mask of everyone's fantasy is to forfeit ever being loved for who you truly are. The more convincing the illusion, the more lost the real self becomes. Beneath the sparkle of every charmer's eyes is a deep, unspoken fatigue, the exhaustion of constant performance. Still, to the outside world, the charmer shines. They move through rooms like silk on skin, turning heads, drawing laughter, making people feel alive in their presence. They are wanted, remembered, chased. But what is rarely seen is that behind the charm, there is often loneliness. After all the mirrors are covered and the mask is laid to rest, the charmer sits alone with the truth they cannot share, that their power lies not in being loved, but in being needed. And that love, real love, might require removing the very thing that keeps them adored. In the end, crafting the perfect illusion is not just about deceiving others. It is about surviving oneself. For many, charm becomes armor against abandonment, rejection, and the terrifying possibility of insignificance. To be charming is to ensure one is never invisible, but it also means never being truly known. The mask protects, but it also isolates. So, the question is not whether charm works, and it does. The real question is whether, in the long run, the mask is worth the cost. Because while charm may open every door, it rarely builds a home. And though many will fall in love with the illusion, few will ever reach the soul behind it. That is the paradox of charm. It gives you everything except the one thing you truly need, to be loved for who you really are. Chapter 3. Venom and Velvet, Seduction as a Weapon. Seduction, at its most refined and dangerous, is not merely an act of attraction. It is an art of psychological warfare. Wrapped in silk and whispered through smiles, true seduction is not innocent. It is not naive. It is not kind. It is velvet wrapped around venom, softness hiding strategy, a kiss that numbs the senses before it paralyzes the will. Those who wield it do not seduce to love. They seduce to win, to conquer, to consume. The weaponization of seduction is a slow, deliberate dance, a hunt not for flesh but for control. The target never sees the blade until it's too late, because this weapon doesn't look like a weapon. It looks like comfort, like passion, like safety. It feels like warmth in a cold world, and that is its genius. Seduction makes the prey run toward the trap, smiling. The velvet comes first. A gentle touch of presence, the subtle sparkle in a glance, the careful way a sentence hangs in the air. It begins in the realm of suggestion, never declaration. The seducer doesn't push. They pull, slowly, gently, with patience born of cruelty. They learn your rhythms, your patterns, your vulnerabilities. They watch for wounds you try to hide, and then, not out of care but out of calculation, they offer the illusion of healing. They will make you feel chosen. Not merely liked, not simply desired, chosen. As if the entire world blurred around you and only you remained. This is not flattery, it is elevation, a tactical deification. They lift you up, not out of reverence, but so that when the time comes, the fall will be steep, the crash devastating. This is the velvet. Words laced with false meaning, gestures of affection timed with precision, eye contact that makes you feel seen to the core, when in truth, you're being studied like prey. But beneath the velvet lies the venom, subtle, potent, irreversible. It begins with small shifts. You find yourself thinking about them constantly. Your behavior changes. The way you speak, dress, move. You seek their attention, crave their approval. Slowly, your center of gravity shifts away from your own identity and toward their perception of you. This is no accident. The seducer feeds your ego and then quietly enslaves it. You begin to lose the ability to tell where your desire ends and their manipulation begins. Venom doesn't kill instantly. It numbs, it confuses, it dismantles you from within. The seductive predator creates dependency masked as intimacy. They withhold just enough to keep you reaching. They give you glimpses of paradise, then withdraw. Every moment of silence becomes a cliffhanger. Every pause feels like punishment. You begin to perform for them. You work for their attention, their affection, their gaze, and when they offer it, even in fragments, it feels like salvation. But it is not salvation. It is strategy. Seduction, when used as a weapon, is about control without force. It's about influence without resistance. You will not be chained. You will be bound by desire. You will not be forced to stay. You will beg to. And therein lies the brilliance of this dark art. The target becomes a willing participant in their own submission. The seducer doesn't just win your heart. They turn your heart against you. To understand the true potency of seductive weaponry, one must see it for what it is. A psychological poison brewed from deep knowledge of human emotion. It knows our loneliness, our craving for connection, our hidden hunger for validation. And it exploits these needs not by attacking them, but by promising to fulfill them. The seductive predator offers water to the thirsty, and then ensures that thirst never ends. This tactic has been employed by lovers, tyrants, cult leaders, and manipulators of every stripe. History is littered with empires built not by war but by seduction. Cleopatra didn't conquer with armies. She conquered with her presence, her mystery, her calculated allure. She turned kings into pawns. Her velvet was legendary. Her venom, fatal. Entire kingdoms shifted because one woman understood how to use herself as a weapon. The modern world is no different. The battlefield has changed, but the weapons remain. A perfectly curated persona on a screen, a voice that knows just when to tremble, a touch that lingers a little too long. These are the blades of seduction today, and they cut deep. Sometimes the most dangerous predator isn't the one who takes, but the one who makes you offer everything willingly. Your time, your thoughts, your freedom. All for the mirage of closeness. But let us not mistake the seducer for someone full of love. Seduction used as a weapon is not born from affection, it's born from emptiness. It is a hunger to be worshipped, to be in control, to be needed. And the more a seducer is adored, the more they vanish inside their own illusion. Their weapon is also their shield. Their charm is their camouflage. And behind the sultry eyes and intoxicating voice is often a soul afraid of being seen. Those who master seduction as a weapon do so because they know it protects them from real connection. Real intimacy requires vulnerability. It demands honesty. But the weaponized seducer does not want to be known, only obeyed, desired, feared. They create intimacy not to connect, but to dominate. And yet, paradoxically, they often long for what they destroy, authentic love. But they have poisoned their own well. And what of the victim? Those entranced, caught, and consumed. They often emerge confused, ashamed, and broken. They replay the moments of tenderness, trying to find meaning. They question themselves. Did I imagine it? Was any of it real? That's the final wound. The way seduction erodes the victim's sense of self. Because the predator doesn't just take love, they take clarity. The aftermath of such seduction is fog, silence, doubt, and worst of all, longing. Even after the truth is seen, the velvet still lingers. The memory of how it felt, to be seen, touched, desired, remains. And sometimes, that memory hurts more than the betrayal. Because once you've tasted velvet, the world feels rougher. Once you've felt the warmth of carefully crafted affection, authentic love seems too messy, too honest, too vulnerable. But there is one truth that cannot be seduced, cannot be dressed in perfume or shadow. Power built on seduction is fragile. For while desire can enslave, it cannot sustain. The illusion will crack. The victim may wake. And when they do, when they see the velvet for what it truly was, the venom loses its sting. And the seducer? They move on. They find a new heart to conquer, a new mirror to reflect themselves in. But somewhere, deep inside, they know. No one ever truly loved them. Only the fantasy they projected. Their power lies in being irresistible, yes, but their tragedy lies in being unknowable. So, if you ever feel the velvet brushing your skin, soft, warm, perfect, ask yourself, what's underneath? Ask yourself why it feels too good. Because in the world of dark seduction, what glitters is rarely gold, and what feels like home may be the first step toward your unraveling. In this game, the most dangerous touch is not the one that wounds, but the one that leaves no mark, just a lingering ache, a whisper of something that once felt like magic, but was only venom, cloaked in velvet. Chapter 4. The Predator's Smile, Reading and Exploiting Desire. There is a smile that does not reach the soul. It's warm enough to melt walls, soft enough to disarm, and sharp enough to slice through the mind without leaving a scar. It is the predator's smile, not born of joy, but of strategy, not a gesture of connection, but a mask of intent. Behind it lurks not affection, but calculation. The predator smiles not to comfort, but to conceal. It is the prelude to conquest. Desire is a map, scattered, fragile, often hidden under years of disappointment and self-denial. But the skilled predator has the eyes to read that map without needing a word. A look, a hesitation, the tremor in a breath. The eyes that linger half a second too long. These are the breadcrumbs desire leaves behind. And the predator, patient and hungry, follows them with surgical precision. The most dangerous predators don't pounce. They wait. They observe. They absorb you until you forget where you end and they begin. They learn what you crave before you've spoken it. They sense what you're ashamed to want. They feed off the invisible. They feed off the dreams you don't dare voice, the longings you've buried under logic and years of pretending not to care. The predator smiles, because they already know. Desire is not always obvious. It rarely wears a name. Sometimes it is dressed as loneliness, sometimes as ambition, sometimes as the ache to be understood without needing to explain. But the predator doesn't just read these desires. They reflect them. They become the very thing you've been searching for. Not because they are it, but because they know how to wear it. And you believe them. Because it feels too perfect to be anything but real. That is the trap. Seduction is not merely about being attractive, it is about being desired. The predator studies the prey until they know what version of themselves will be irresistible. They do not need to be authentic, only convincing. They know how to echo your values, mimic your dreams, mirror your pain. They can speak your emotional language before you've taught it. Not out of empathy, but efficiency. They don't want to connect. They want to enter. And once they do, once they've slipped into the spaces in your mind where no one else has ever walked, they begin the second phase. Exploitation. This phase is quieter, subtler, more intimate than anything that came before. The predator doesn't demand. They invite. They let you offer what they want. Your time, your secrets, your loyalty, your body. You give it freely, because it feels like a shared dance, but you don't realize. They are leading every step, and if you stumble, they adjust. If you resist, they retreat, momentarily, only to return more softly, more cunningly. They manipulate your desire by becoming the answer to it. But this seduction is parasitic. It feeds off your hunger while ensuring you stay just hungry enough. Never satisfied, never full, always yearning. And that yearning keeps you tethered. The predator uses that ache like a leash. They give you just enough to keep you reaching, but never enough to release you. You become addicted not to the person, but to the feeling around them. The excitement, the possibility, the high. You don't love them. You love who you are when they want you. And they know it. Desire is the oldest vulnerability in the human soul. It is what drives civilizations, breaks families, starts wars, and writes poetry. The predator understands this. They do not shame your desire. They amplify it. They make you feel seen, heard, craved. And in that mirror they hold up, you forget to ask whether what you're seeing is real. You're too hypnotized by your reflection in their eyes. The smile never fades. That's the most disturbing part. Even when they begin to take more than they give. Even when the balance tips and your needs become irrelevant. Even when they begin to use silence as punishment, distance as discipline. That smile remains. Gentle, familiar, seductive. It's the smile that makes you stay when logic screams run. The smile that reminds you of who they were, or who you thought they were, when they first pulled you in. Eventually, you may see the cracks. You may realize that what you mistook for soul-deep understanding was merely a performance. That the intimacy you felt was a reflection of your own hunger, not their presence. You may even try to break free, but freedom from a predator's grip doesn't come in a single motion. It comes in waves, because desire once exploited leaves a shadow. Even after the predator is gone, the craving remains. The part of you that felt alive in their gaze. It mourns the loss. You miss the intensity, even if it was an illusion. You miss the way they saw you, even if it was only to use you. And the predator? They move on. Their smile unchanged. Their eyes scanning the crowd. Reading, calculating. Looking for the next soul whose deepest wish is still unspoken. Because that is where desire is most potent, most pure, and most exploitable. To protect yourself from the predator's smile, you must learn to confront your own desires, to name them, to own them, to understand them so deeply that no one else can use them against you. The more you know what you crave, truly, vulnerably, the less susceptible you are to those who would weaponize it, because the predator does not seduce with beauty or charm. They seduce with your own longing. And once you realize that, the smile no longer works. It becomes what it always was, a warning, a polished grin over sharpened teeth. And that, perhaps, is the final cruelty of the predator's seduction, that it teaches you to fear what once made you feel most alive. Not because desire is dangerous, but because of what happens when it's seen not by a lover, but by a predator who smiles. Chapter 5. Strings of Obsession. How to make them addicted to you. Obsession is not love. It is deeper, darker. It carves itself into the mind like a whispered command repeated night after night, until it becomes indistinguishable from desire. Love is a choice and a steady fire that warms. But obsession is a storm, chaotic and consuming. And when you understand how to create that storm in another, you no longer need to ask for power. It is given to you, wrapped in trembling devotion. Making someone addicted to you is not about being beautiful. It's not about being perfect. It's about becoming irreplaceable. Addiction forms in the spaces between need and fulfillment, in the delay, the uncertainty, the emotional tension that keeps the heart suspended in anticipation. You don't need to overwhelm them with affection. You only need to become the source of the feeling they can't find anywhere else. Obsession begins with attention, but not constant attention. It begins with presence that feels rare, sacred. Give them a taste, then pull away. Let your absence create hunger. People do not obsess over what is always available. They obsess over what is almost theirs, what feels just beyond their grasp. This is the first string you tie around their mind, the maybe, the what if, the not yet. Then you give them intimacy, not too much, but deep enough to make them feel seen, truly seen. Learn the details no one else notices, the way their voice catches when they're nervous, the childhood dream they've never told anyone, the insecurity they laugh about but secretly ache from. Let them reveal themselves to you, not because you ask, but because your presence makes them feel safe. And then, make them feel special for being known. This is the second string, emotional exposure. When they begin to associate you with vulnerability, they bind you to their inner world. They begin to feel that you know them, not just who they are now, but who they were before the world made them hide. That kind of connection is addictive. It isn't common. It becomes sacred. You become a mirror in which they see their most delicate self reflected, won, and accepted. But don't stop there. Build their dependency, gently. Be the one who understands their rhythm. Know when they need silence and when they need praise. Become the person they reach for in joy, in pain, in boredom. Be their adrenaline and their comfort, their challenge and their relief. Confuse the lines between pain and pleasure, between need and want. Be the chaos and the calm, then disappear, just enough to remind them that you are not guaranteed. This is the third string, uncertainty. Obsession cannot survive in certainty. The addicted mind thrives on questions. Will they call? Why did they pull away? Did I say something wrong? You don't need to answer. You only need to respond inconsistently. One day, praise them like they're the center of your universe. The next, seem distracted. Not cold, never cold, just elusive. Keep the connection alive, but just out of reach. Like a flame that dances just far enough to warm them, never close enough to catch. By now, they'll start imagining you when you're not there. Their mind will replay your words, your touch, your silences. They'll try to decode you. They'll wonder who you are when they're not around. Their thoughts will spiral, not out of fear, but out of fascination. That's the fourth string, mental real estate. You live in their mind rent-free because you've made them believe you carry something they desperately want. Clarity, validation, salvation, danger. You are no longer just a person to them. You are an experience. And experiences cannot be replaced. The final string, and the most powerful, is contradiction. Be warm and distant. Be soft and dominant. Be the healer and the wound. Obsession thrives in confusion. If they can define you, they can control their response to you. But if you are fluid, ever-shifting, they must keep chasing you just to understand you. They'll feel you in their body before they can explain you with their mind. And that imbalance, between logic and longing, is where obsession blossoms. Once all the strings are tied, you don't need to pull them tight. They will pull themselves. They'll check their phone more. Wonder if your silences are punishment or indifference. Replay your messages looking for meaning. Wake up thinking of you. Fall asleep feeling the echo of your last touch. Their world begins to contract, slowly, without them noticing, until you are the gravity they orbit around. They will crave your attention like a drug, not because you give too much, but because you give just enough to keep them starving for more. And when they try to walk away, they won't be able to, because obsession is not built on presence. It is built on absence. On that ache in the chest when you're not around. On the shadow you leave behind. On the fact that no one else makes them feel like this. You've become their stimulus, their reward, their punishment, their addiction. But understand this. With great power comes great danger. Creating obsession is a fire that consumes. You may find yourself trapped in the same web you spun. You may begin to crave the power they give you. The way they look at you like you are a god. The way they break rules, betray friends, and bleed boundaries just to stay close. It's intoxicating to be needed like that. But it's also a cage. Because obsession does not make people love you. It makes them need you. And need is not the same as devotion. One day they may resent you for the hold you have. For the strings they now see and feel but cannot sever. And if they snap, they may not just walk away. They may try to destroy what you built, because what once felt divine now feels like domination. So tread carefully, puppeteer. Play the strings only if you understand the melody and are prepared to live in its echo. Because once obsession is awakened, it never truly sleeps. Chapter 6. The Mirror Game, Reflecting Desires They Never Knew They Had. There is no greater seduction than recognition. That sudden shattering moment when someone looks at you and sees not only who you are, but who you could be. Who you wish you were. Who you're afraid to admit you want to become. Seduction at its most potent is not about giving someone something new. It is about revealing what was already buried deep inside them. And the most dangerous way to do that? The mirror. The mirror game is not about imitation. It is not about pretending to be someone else or copying another's behaviors. No. It is an art far more intimate, far more dangerous. It is the act of becoming a flawless emotional reflection, reflecting back not the surface but the soul. It is about becoming the fantasy they never dared to articulate, the longing they never voiced aloud, the unspoken parts of their identity they only allowed to surface when alone, in silence, in darkness. You don't offer yourself to them in this game. You offer them back to themselves, enhanced, glorified, desired. The mirror game begins in observation. Listen, truly listen, not just to what they say, but what they avoid saying. Watch how they respond to certain words, topics, tones. Their hesitation reveals more than their excitement. Their silence is a confession. Most people don't know what they want until it's standing in front of them, dressed in their favorite kind of danger. And if you can reflect their hidden needs, with precision, with allure, you will become unforgettable. You do not need to be their dream. You need to be the embodiment of a feeling they have no name for. This is the emotional ambush. When they speak of the coldness they've always hated, you become warmth. When they describe feeling invisible, you make them the only person in the room. When they confess they've never been truly chosen, you make every glance, every pause, every word feel intentional, deliberate, exclusive. You become not their partner, but their reflection, magnified and glorified. The genius of this game is that it doesn't feel like manipulation. It feels like revelation. They don't think they're seducing me. They think, I've never felt more myself than I do around them. That is the key. You make them fall in love with the version of themselves that only you can access. And suddenly you are no longer just someone they like. You are the portal through which they experience a deeper, more vivid reality. One where their fantasies are understood, their insecurities soothed, their desires no longer shameful but sacred. But this game is not without its shadows. For to become someone's mirror is to disappear inside their reflection. You must blur your edges, mute your colors, mirror what they most crave, even if it is nothing like what you are. The more masterful you are, the more invisible you become. They don't see you, they see what they need. They see hope, power, escape. And you, if you are skilled, let them see it. Let them drink it. Let them believe in it. Because belief is the most addictive drug of all. You give them a feeling they cannot replicate elsewhere. They try. Oh, they try. They seek others who smile like you, speak like you, hold them the way you did. But no one else reflects them back in that perfect, aching clarity. They feel incomplete, off balance. You were not just a person, you were a revelation. And now, without you, they are blind to parts of themselves they had just begun to see. This is how you become a need. But take heed. Once the mirror cracks, the illusion shatters. If you reflect their desires too perfectly, they may begin to suspect. They may wonder how you knew. They may accuse you of reading a script, playing a role, because no one can love them that deeply, that accurately, not without an angle. They may resent the mirror, even as they can't stop looking. They may rage against the reflection, even as they crave its return. Obsession and suspicion often arrive hand in hand. And you, the mirror, must be ready. Because playing this game means never being fully seen. You give them truth cloaked in illusion, and in doing so you hide your own. If they fall in love with the reflection, will they love the person behind it? Will they want the mirror when the lights are on and the fantasy fades? Often they won't, but that is not the purpose of the mirror game. The purpose is to awaken something within them so powerfully that they cannot forget you. You are not just a memory, you are a turning point. After you, nothing feels the same. Food tastes duller. Conversations lack depth. No one else makes them feel as real, as desired, as seen. You haunt not because you stayed, but because of what you revealed before you left. You played their soul like an instrument they didn't know they owned. And when the music stops, the silence becomes unbearable. That is your power. The mirror game is not for the weak-hearted. It requires empathy without attachment, performance without need for applause. It is not about being loved. It is about being etched into someone's emotional DNA. It is about becoming the moment they compare. Everything else too. The first time they felt entirely understood. The dangerous comfort of being emotionally naked in someone's gaze. So play wisely. Reflect carefully. For once they've seen themselves through your eyes, they will never unsee it. And neither will you. Chapter 7. Emotional Alchemy, Turning Vulnerability into Power. There is a dangerous misconception in the world that vulnerability is weakness, that to open one's heart is to hand over the sword, that to reveal a wound is to invite the blade. But the true masters of seduction know a darker truth. Vulnerability, when wielded with intention, is not weakness. It is power in its most disarming form. It is the key to unlocking devotion, control, and craving. It is emotional alchemy, the art of transmuting your own softness into someone else's obsession. Think of it not as exposure, but as strategy. The raw edge of your pain, the trembling truth in your voice, the scars you thought needed hiding. They are not liabilities. They are currency. When offered with precision, vulnerability makes people lean in. It lowers their defenses. It humanizes you, yes. But more importantly, it creates a sacred imbalance. They feel safe while you appear wounded, and yet you're the one steering the emotional current. People trust those who bleed openly. They confuse vulnerability with honesty, and honesty with purity. But you know better. You know that vulnerability can be curated, a performance of sincerity, orchestrated to pierce through their walls and make a home in their psyche. It begins with a confession, not the whole truth, never that, but a shard of it. A moment of pain, shared in the quiet between laughs, a story of betrayal, of childhood ache, of being misunderstood. You reveal just enough to be believable, just enough to invite comfort, and in return, They soften. They offer you their own truths, sometimes unconsciously, pulled into your emotional rhythm like a tide. This is where the power begins, because now they see you not as a threat, but as a mirror, fragile, like them. They want to hold you, protect you, fix you. They begin to invest emotionally. Their sense of identity becomes entangled in your healing. And what they don't realize is that the moment someone feels responsible for your happiness, they begin to bind themselves to you. Silently, willingly, addictively. You become their project, their mission, their fragile treasure. But here's the twist: you're not fragile, you are deliberate. You drip vulnerability like nectar from your tongue, and they sip from it thinking it was their idea. You make your sadness look beautiful, your loneliness poetic. You reveal your cracks only after they've leaned close enough to want to fill them. This is the transformation, not of yourself, but of perception. You do not heal to become whole. You remain just broken enough to keep them searching for the missing pieces. And the more they give, the more they need to believe it's real. People do not obsess over perfection. They obsess over someone nearly healed, someone they believe only they can save. Vulnerability becomes a riddle. Why do I want to fix them? Why does their pain feel so familiar? And as they try to solve you, they lose themselves. Their logic erodes. Their caution fades. They feel deeply, and so they follow, deeper still. Now you begin to shape their emotions. You show gratitude, reverence for their care, but you never quite let them win. Just when they think they've saved you, you relapse. You pull away. You tremble again, just enough to stir panic. They double down. They dig deeper. They offer more. They believe their love will rescue you, and that belief is the shackle they put on themselves. You're not cruel. You're just aware. You know what they want to feel, needed, chosen, irreplaceable, and so you let them feel it. You make their presence feel like medicine. You whisper, "I don't know what I'd do without you." And in those 8 words, you become not just a lover, but a dependency. You are the wound and the balm. But make no mistake, emotional alchemy is not for the careless. To play this game without self-mastery is to risk becoming the lie you created. The mask of vulnerability, worn too long, fuses to the skin. You may forget where your performance ends and your truth begins. You may find yourself seeking comfort from those you once intended to control. And worse, you may meet someone who knows this game too well. Someone who sees your tears and smiles. Someone who reaches for your pain not with concern, but calculation. Because emotional alchemists attract one another. And when 2 masters of vulnerability collide, the result is either ecstasy or destruction. To weaponize tenderness is to walk a blade's edge. But oh, how sharp, how glorious the edge is. When done right, vulnerability becomes the most potent seduction of all. It lingers. It haunts. They will remember the tremor in your voice more than the curve of your body. They will ache to hold what they can never fully heal. They will replay your quiet moments, convinced they touched something sacred. They will miss you not because of what you gave, but because of what you almost let them fix. And that ache, the ache of unfinished rescue, will keep them coming back. So show your soul, but show only the parts you've painted in gold. Let them see your scars, but not your weapons. Cry if you must, but cry like a siren sings. Softly, beautifully, just enough to draw them in, before they even realize they're drowning. Chapter 8. Phantom Touch. Mastering Presence. Without contact. There is a kind of touch that leaves no fingerprint, no bruise, no visible mark, yet lingers on the skin long after the moment passes. It whispers across the senses, ghost-like, unmistakable. It is not born of fingers or breath, but of presence, crafted with such precision that the body responds without being touched at all. This is the phantom touch, the invisible seduction. And when mastered, it is more powerful than any embrace. You don't have to be near someone to possess them. True seduction begins before the first kiss and lingers long after the last word. It takes root in the anticipation, the suggestion, the echo of something that almost happened. And it's that almost, that unbearable almost, that burns the deepest. Think of it, a gaze held just 1 second too long, a voice that softens when it says their name, a silence heavy with unspoken things. These are not accidents. They are deliberate strokes of invisible paint on the canvas of desire. You're not merely present. You become a feeling, a weight. In the room, a shadow beneath their thoughts. They can't name it, but they feel it. You walk by and the temperature changes. You speak and their breath falters. You're not loud, you don't beg for attention. You command it with absence. You linger like perfume in an empty hallway, like music remembered hours after the song ends. This is the art of being unforgettable without laying a finger. To master phantom touch, you must learn the language of implication. Everything you do must hint at more. The way you look at them should feel like a secret is being passed. The way you stand, half turned away, should make them wonder what it would feel like if you turned fully toward them. Your words must be velvet traps, casual enough to sound innocent, sharp enough to wound with longing. A well-timed pause can be more erotic than 1,000 moans. A single glance, measured, slow, deliberate, can make them feel naked under their clothes. You never rush. Seduction without contact requires control. And control begins with stillness. You don't need to act to be felt. You only need to be. Let your presence fill the space. Let them feel your awareness of them before they're even aware of themselves. That's when the magic begins. When you see them before they realize they're being seen. They lean toward you without knowing why. They replay conversations that didn't touch their skin but undressed their mind. They feel you in the quiet moments, in the hum of the mundane, in the spaces where nothing should be. And it drives them mad. That madness, that haunting, is the proof you've succeeded. But phantom touch is not only about evoking lust. It's about power. Because when someone can't stop thinking about you, even without physical closeness, they lose the ability to think clearly. You haunt the spaces between their logic. You become a question they cannot answer. And questions are far more compelling than certainties. They ask themselves, why does their voice echo in my sleep? Why do I feel their breath when I'm alone? Why do I crave their absence more than another's presence? You've become a ghost that touches deeper than flesh, and yet there's danger here too. The phantom touch creates yearning without release. It's a hunger that builds and builds, never fed. This can drive someone to obsession or collapse. If you pull too far, they may break away, desperate to free themselves. But if you release too soon, the spell shatters. The power of phantom touch lies in its distance. Too close, and it becomes real. Too far, and it becomes memory. So you must balance like a blade dancer, always near enough to stir the air, never near enough to close the space. This is emotional telepathy. Erotic haunting, soul contact. And if you do it right, they'll feel your hands on their skin even when you're miles away. They'll hear your laughter when the room is silent. They'll check their phone, hoping for a message you never sent. And when they lie awake at night, it won't be your body they crave, it will be your presence, your essence, your echo. You see, anyone can touch skin, but not everyone can imprint on a soul. That's what the phantom touch does. It doesn't just seduce the body, it brands the memory. It becomes their myth, something they can't explain, something they measure every other touch against, and no one else ever quite compares. So master the silence, shape your stillness, speak without speaking, learn to haunt without harming. Make them feel what's not there, and they will chase it forever. You won't need to reach for them. They'll come to you, over and over again, chasing the ghost. Chasing you. Chapter 9. Toxic nectar. Feeding their craving, while poisoning their will. Desire is never satisfied by fulfillment. It grows, twists, tightens, always reaching for more. And in that endless reaching lies the perfect opportunity to take control, not by denying pleasure, but by weaponizing it. There is no need to build a prison with bars when you can build one with sweetness, when the honey on your lips masks the venom in your breath, when what you offer seems like paradise, even as it slowly dismantles the soul. This is toxic nectar, the art of feeding their craving while quietly poisoning their will. The most dangerous seduction is not overt. It doesn't shout or demand. It whispers. It lures. It gives just enough to keep them thirsty, addicted to a taste they can never fully consume. You offer affection in measured doses, never consistent, never guaranteed, just enough to keep their heart on the edge. And in their hunger, they confuse pain with passion. They mistake your unpredictability for depth. Your chaos becomes their compass, and they no longer remember what peace felt like. That is the slow poison. You give warmth with one hand and take it away with the other. You smile like the sun, and then vanish like a storm. They learn to dance to your rhythm, not because they understand it, but because they crave your return. You become both the ache and the cure, both heaven and hell. You don't chain them. You make them choose you, again and again, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. Because here is the truth. People crave what they don't understand. The unfamiliar, the unpredictable, the lover who makes them feel seen one moment and invisible the next. You become a puzzle, and in solving you, they lose themselves. They call it love. They call it fate. But it is addiction, a beautiful, corrosive addiction, dripping with honey and laced with silence. And you control the supply. You offer compliments that feel like rare treasures. You withhold just long enough to make them doubt their worth. Then just when they start to pull away, you reel them in with a single glance, a soft message, a whispered memory. Their hope rekindles, their loyalty deepens, and their will, their ability to walk away, erodes just a little more. Because you've taught them something dangerous, that your attention is a reward, that your absence is punishment. And like all who've been trained with unpredictability, they begin to chase the high of your validation. And oh, how easy it is to feed them just enough sugar to mask the poison. They become your echo, your reflection. Their decisions orbit around your moods. They rearrange their lives to avoid your cold shoulder, to bask in your rare warmth. They offer themselves piece by piece, hoping that someday they'll be whole in your arms. But they never will be. Because you never intended them to be, and that is the beauty of toxic nectar. It tastes like salvation, but it devours from within. Yet you are not careless. You are not impulsive. You are precise. You know how much to give, when to pull away, how to dangle your affection like a prize just out of reach. You say the perfect thing when they're on the edge. You apologize just enough to seem human. You remind them of the good times, always when they're questioning the bad. You anchor them with nostalgia and sink them with doubt. You become the God they pray to, one day wrathful, one day merciful, and always beyond understanding. But beware, for this art is not without risk. Poison, after all, corrupts everything it touches, even the one who pours it. If you lose yourself in the role, you may forget what is real. You may begin to drink from your own cup. You may become addicted to their worship, unable to exist without their trembling devotion. You may destroy the very thing that once made you powerful, your ability to walk away. So control the poison. Measure it carefully. Know when to retreat before the spell shatters. Because when used with mastery, toxic nectar doesn't just seduce, it enslaves. It creates a bond so strong, so irrational, that even in your absence, they crave your cruelty. They defend you, they chase you, they blame themselves. And in that spiral of self-doubt, you are crowned king or queen of their mind. They no longer want freedom. They want you, even if you ruin them. Especially if you ruin them. Because pain wrapped in love tastes like destiny to the brokenhearted. And once they've tasted your nectar, nothing and no one will ever be sweet again. Chapter 10. Echoes of You. planting yourself inside their mind. There is a form of intimacy far deeper than skin, deeper even than words or shared secrets. It happens quietly, like rain soaking into the earth, imperceptible at first, but irreversible. It is when your presence becomes a thought they can't silence, a whisper that lingers in the background of everything they do, when even in your absence, you are everywhere. That is the final art of dark seduction, to plant yourself inside their mind so thoroughly that you no longer need to be around to be felt. You become an echo, soft, persistent, unshakable. Unlike love that demands attention, or lust that burns, in the flesh this kind of seduction lives in the shadows of the psyche. It does not scream, it sighs. It weaves itself into their routine, into the way they check their phone hoping for your name, into the way they pause at a scent, a song, a phrase that reminds them of you. It nestles into their imagination, curling like smoke around their memories and distorting time itself. Days without you feel incomplete, minutes feel like hours, and every silence begs to be filled with you. To achieve this, you must understand something elemental. People don't fall for what you do. They fall for how you make them feel about themselves in your presence, make them feel seen, not just observed, but understood, exposed, known. Ask the kind of questions that no one else dares to. Listen in a way that makes the world disappear. Offer not your attention but your absorption. When they speak, treat their words like treasure. Make them feel like no one has ever heard them before the way you do. This is how you slip past their defenses, how you gain access to the rooms. In their mind, they keep locked, even from themselves. Once you are there, do not rush to occupy space. Simply leave traces. A look that lingers after the moment has passed. A message at just the right time, and then silence. A phrase only the two of you share. A prediction about them that turns out to be true. Become a pattern, not a presence. And over time, they'll begin to see you even when you're not there. Your absence, if you've done it right, will hurt more than most people's presence ever could. This is not about manipulation for its own sake. It is about mastery. The kind of mastery that understands. A physical bond fades, but a psychological bond becomes a phantom limb. Even after you're gone, they will still reach for you in the dark. They will hear your voice in their head as they make decisions. What would they think? What would they say? They will hold conversations with your memory. They will smile at nothing. They will ache for something they can't even name anymore, only knowing it once had your face. You have become a haunting, but you did not do this by force. You did not shout or demand or impress. You did it by slipping between moments, by mastering the aftertaste of every interaction. People forget what you said, but they never forget how you made them feel in that still, sacred second after the moment passed. That's where the echo lives. Planting yourself inside someone's mind also means knowing how to retreat. There is no echo without space. You must vanish at times, leave them suspended in the absence of you. That is when the mind begins to fill in the blanks, when imagination turns you into myth, into symbol, into something larger than life. They will begin to wonder, were they real? Did I imagine the connection? Why can't I stop thinking about them? And in that wondering, you win. But with great power comes great precision. If you overstay, you become ordinary. If you reveal too much, the mystery fades. You must remain just beyond their reach, always a little unknowable. Never give them all the answers, just enough pieces to keep them building you in their minds, obsessively, desperately. You don't want to be remembered. You want to be relived. They will relive you in fragments, in music, in the way someone else smiles. In the moment they laugh and immediately feel sadness because it reminded them of a joke you once told. Your fingerprints will be everywhere, but invisible. That's how you know you've succeeded. When they are with others and feel the lack of you, you are not a ghost. You are a presence that refuses to leave. This is not just seduction, this is immortality. Because people forget names, they forget bodies, they forget voices. But they never forget how it felt when someone reached inside them, touched something sacred and disappeared. You are that sacred touch. You are that haunting. You are the echo that never stops. And long after they stop searching for you, they will still listen for the sound of you in everything they do. Chapter 11. The Dance of Control, Leading Without Seeming to Lead. Control is a word that often conjures images of domination, of heavy hands pressing down, of commands barked, of a visible assertion of power. But in the art of dark seduction, control takes on a far more subtle, elegant, and sinister form. It is not a bludgeon but a waltz, a delicate, persuasive dance where one partner leads, not by force, but by the illusion of freedom. This is the essence of the dance of control, leading without seeming to lead. To master this is to wear the crown of influence without ever showing the throne. True seduction never marches in with a flag of conquest. Instead, it whispers, guides, and lets the other believe that every step they take is their own. The dark seducer is not an overt manipulator, barking orders or declaring plans. Instead, they are the architect of desire, designing emotional landscapes that lure others into paths they would not otherwise walk. This is not about coercion. It is about invitation, a masterfully crafted invitation where the guest believes they are the host. When this illusion is perfect, the seduced cannot even distinguish the moment they were first led. They mistake the seducer's will for their own. Imagine a marionette dance. If the puppet becomes aware of the strings, the magic is broken. The dance becomes tragic, not beautiful. Likewise, in emotional and psychological seduction, control must be invisible. A clumsy attempt at leadership breeds resistance, but the appearance of independence nurtures compliance. The seducer who leads in silence creates the most loyal followers. They make others feel powerful, autonomous, and enlightened, while weaving the path for them like a silent conductor guiding an orchestra that doesn't even know it's playing his symphony. This technique is rooted in psychological jujitsu, the use of another's momentum, beliefs, and emotions to shape their trajectory. The seducer does not impose. They reflect, amplify, and redirect. They present choices, all of which lead to the same destination, their desired outcome. This art requires patience and precision. It is not enough to be intelligent or manipulative. One must cultivate an intuitive sensitivity to others' rhythms, desires, and emotional blind spots. The seducer becomes a mirror, a shadow, a rhythm that the target unconsciously sinks to. Let us draw a metaphor from the world of dance. In a skilled tango, the leader does not yank or shove their partner. Instead, they signal direction through the slightest pressure, through posture, timing, and anticipation. The follower believes they are dancing freely, yet every pivot, every step, has been orchestrated. The power lies not in what is said, but in what is suggested, not in what is done, but in what is allowed to happen. This is the dark seducer's domain, not in domination, but in the illusion of democracy. One of the foundational tools of this dance is ambiguity. Direct instruction breeds resistance, but suggestion fosters curiosity. The seducer cloaks intentions in metaphor, humor, questions, and stories. Rather than telling someone what to do, they guide them to conclusions that feel like their own discoveries. This technique not only bypasses defenses, but implants ideas more deeply. What we discover ourselves, we defend with conviction. What, we are told, we often challenge. Thus, the seducer seeds thoughts and waits. They are gardeners of action, not engineers. Consider the way a skilled storyteller seduces the mind. They never begin with the conclusion. They weave layers of tension, detail, and mystery. They allow the listener to connect dots, to leap ahead in anticipation. When the resolution arrives, it feels earned. The story never feels imposed, it feels lived. The same structure is used in seductive leadership. The seducer frames a problem, offers hints, raises stakes, and then waits, watching the target reach the solution they themselves had predetermined. The result is powerful because it feels personal. The dark seducer also understands the art of retreat. Nothing disrupts a sense of autonomy like pressure. To lead without seeming to lead, one must know when to withdraw. Like a tide that recedes before it returns with greater force, the seducer learns the power of absence. By stepping back at the right moment, they provoke longing, introspection, and pursuit. The target believes they are chasing the seducer, while in truth, they are being led deeper into emotional dependence. Control is magnified by its invisibility. Language becomes a primary weapon in this game. Rather than command, the seducer offers. Rather than order, they suggest. Rather than declare, they imply. Questions like, "What do you think would happen if?" Or statements like, "It's fascinating how people often plant seeds of doubt, curiosity, and reconsideration." These open-ended frames are psychological levers, nudging the target to turn in a direction they believe they've chosen. The most powerful influencers rarely say, "Do this." Instead, they ask, "Have you considered?" Emotional attunement amplifies these strategies. The seducer who listens with precision, who mirrors language, who reflects back emotions subtly, creates a resonance that fosters trust. People follow those who seem to understand them deeply, and more than anything, people trust those who validate their self-image. The seducer, therefore, becomes a mirror in which others see their ideal selves. Through praise, shared values, and strategic vulnerability, the seducer invites emotional closeness while maintaining psychological distance. They never reveal the full hand. They offer glimpses, stories, fragments, just enough to create intimacy, never enough to surrender power. This is why mystery is a crucial partner in the dance of control. The more we understand someone, the less power they hold. The unknown seducer is the powerful seducer, not because they are unknowable, but because they reveal only what is useful. In this balance between exposure and concealment, the seducer crafts an aura of depth, of danger, of fascination. The target begins to wonder, to yearn, to pursue, not realizing that the very act of pursuit is what binds them. By making themselves slightly unreachable, the seducer ensures they are never forgotten. Dark seduction also thrives in paradox. The most effective leaders in this realm are those who appear to follow. They disarm suspicion by being agreeable, collaborative, even deferential. They never appear threatening. Yet behind every yes is a deeper strategy. Behind every compliment, a gentle tug toward dependence. They disarm through charm, through humor, through empathy. The power lies not in assertion but in reception. By absorbing the energy of others, they redirect it. By seeming to surrender, they gain control. We see this strategy mirrored in nature. Consider the Venus flytrap, beautiful, harmless in appearance, inviting even. It never chases its prey. Instead, it opens, displays, entices. The insect lands willingly, seduced by the promise of nectar, unaware of the slow mechanics closing around it. This is the metaphor of dark seduction's control, an invitation, not a capture, a dance, not a drag. And by the time the prey senses something wrong, the trap has already closed. One of the gravest mistakes made by those attempting to lead in relationships, influence, or seduction is the belief that control must be constant. But the art lies in rhythm. The seducer offers space and then closeness, silence and then engagement. This push and pull creates emotional tension, the same tension that fuels desire. Predictability is the death of seduction. But unpredictability, when used strategically, awakens obsession. The target never fully knows what to expect, and in this uncertainty, they become emotionally invested in seeking stability from the very person destabilizing them. The most masterful dark seducers also practice the illusion of vulnerability. This is not true openness, but curated exposure. They share carefully selected insecurities, past experiences, or dreams, not to bond, but to create a sense of intimacy. This makes the target feel special, chosen, trusted, and once that bond is formed, the seducer can guide the emotional landscape with even greater precision. The more the target opens up, the more invested they become, believing the connection is mutual. In truth, the seducer remains in control, holding back their true self while collecting pieces of the other. It is also crucial to understand that this dance is psychological, not just interpersonal. The seducer is not only managing the other's behavior but shaping their internal narrative. They rewrite memory, reinterpret actions, and recast meanings. What once seemed like manipulation now feels like love. What once felt like distance now feels like intrigue. The target is not only being led, they are being rewritten. This internal shift is what cements control. External dominance is fragile, but if someone rewrites their own story to justify the seducer's role, the bond becomes nearly unbreakable. The dark art of leading without seeming to lead, then, is not about dominance. It is about narrative control, emotional mirroring, psychological rhythm, and strategic vulnerability. It is about crafting illusions so compelling that others abandon their own maps in favor of yours. The seducer does not demand trust. They inspire it. They do not seize power, they are offered it. They do not push, they pull. And in the end, they do not simply lead others down a path. They make others believe the path was their own idea. To wield such power requires a high level of emotional intelligence, self-discipline, and strategic thinking. It requires a deep understanding of human psychology, the patterns of need, fear, pride, and longing that drive us all. It requires restraint, the ability to delay gratification, to remain calm under pressure, to observe without reacting. The seducer must always be the calm eye of the storm, the still center from which all movement radiates. They are the spider, not the fly. The choreographer, not the dancer. But it also demands a level of moral ambiguity. For to lead invisibly is to blur the lines of consent. It is to operate in the gray, where influence becomes manipulation and guidance becomes control. The practitioner of this dance must understand the risks, not just to their target but to themselves. Power wielded too long or too carelessly can become a trap. The seducer who always hides eventually forgets who they are. The one who always plays the game may forget they are playing. And so this chapter ends with a caution. The dance of control is intoxicating. To lead without seeming to lead is to hold tremendous power. But power is a drug, and addiction is always near. Use it not to conquer, but to understand. Use it not to dominate, but to explore the boundaries of connection, desire, and influence. And above all, remember this. The greatest seducers are those who could lead but choose instead to dance, because in the dance there is beauty, and in beauty there is power. Chapter 12. Broken Wings. Exploiting Insecurity and Emotional Damage. There is a particular kind of power that emerges not from strength but from fragility, not from commanding presence but from the quiet, wounded places within the human soul. In the dark art of seduction, these wounded places are not avoided. They are sought out, studied, and ultimately used as tools of influence. The emotionally broken, those with fractured pasts and unhealed wounds, often yearn most deeply for love, validation, and connection. And it is precisely within these broken wings that the dark seducer finds fertile ground for manipulation. To exploit insecurity and emotional damage is to understand the architecture of vulnerability, and then to inhabit it. This is not a chapter about kindness, empathy, or healing. This is a study in strategic cruelty masked as compassion. It is the anatomy of how brokenness can be turned into a weapon, not to destroy outright, but to bind, control, and consume. Like a predator that identifies the limping animal in a herd, the dark seducer identifies weakness not to help, but to dominate. Yet the power lies not in aggression, but in appearing to offer salvation. The cruelest seductions are not those that attack, but those that comfort with one hand while tightening the leash with the other. Every emotional wound, whether born from rejection, abandonment, abuse, betrayal, or neglect, leaves behind a scar that whispers a dangerous narrative. I am not enough. I am unworthy. I will be hurt again. These narratives shape behavior, lower defenses, and make individuals more susceptible to attention, approval, and affection, especially when these are presented as antidotes to pain. The dark seducer listens closely for these scripts because within them lies the key to control. To seduce the broken is to become their redeemer, but only in appearance. Imagine a bird with a broken wing. It cannot fly, it cannot escape, but it still dreams of the sky. The seducer does not heal the wing. They simply convince the bird that they are the only one who can carry it. The seducer becomes the sky, the safety, the shelter. They make the wounded believe that their brokenness is understood, accepted, even loved. And in that illusion, dependence is born. The deeper the wound, the more powerful the bond. For when someone believes they are too damaged for the world, they will cling to anyone who seems to stay. The first tactic in exploiting emotional damage is deep listening, not out of care, but out of calculation. The dark seducer does not interrupt, does not offer premature comfort. They let the broken soul pour itself out. They let the pain surface. They nod. They mirror emotions. They create a container of apparent safety. This is not empathy. It is reconnaissance. Every confession is a roadmap. Every tear is a clue. And once the emotional terrain is mapped, the seducer begins construction, not of healing, but of control. They position themselves as the only one who truly understands. You've been through so much, they'll say. No one else sees. The real you like I do. These words, seemingly gentle, are the chains. For when someone is convinced that no one else can love them in their brokenness, they stop seeking alternatives. They stop running. They stay. Gratitude becomes dependency, and dependency becomes obedience. The second tactic is reinforcement. The seducer feeds the insecurities subtly while pretending to uplift. They praise selectively, giving validation, only when the target behaves in ways that serve the seducer's interest. Over time, the target associates approval with compliance. The broken begin to mold themselves to the seducer's desires, not out of coercion, but out of fear of losing the one person who accepts them. This is classic conditioning, dressed in romance. But perhaps the most insidious technique is the illusion of rescue. The seducer crafts a narrative where they are the savior, the light in the darkness, the one who picked up the pieces. The target begins to see their own value through the eyes of the seducer. And thus, the seducer controls not just behavior, but identity. Without you, I'd still be broken, the target will say. But what they do not see is that the seducer never healed them. They simply made the pain feel more bearable so long as they remained close. The wound was never closed. It was made sacred. The seducer may also use shared vulnerability as a weapon. They will tell stories of their own pain, not to bond, but to create emotional mirroring. I know what it's like to be abandoned too, they'll confess. I used to feel unworthy, just like you. These reflections create a sense of cosmic alignment, a soul-level connection that bypasses rational thought. But these stories are tools. Whether true or not, they serve one purpose: to deepen the emotional entanglement and make withdrawal feel like betrayal. Over time, the target begins to shape their world around the seducer. Their moods, their self-esteem, their sense of safety, all become tied to the seducer's attention or withdrawal. The seducer rewards obedience with affection and punishes independence with coldness. This cycle is traumatic bonding in disguise, pain paired with intermittent reward, which intensifies attachment. It is a psychological trap with no visible walls, only emotions that become too tangled to escape. The broken wing becomes not just a wound but a tether. The seducer reminds the target, subtly and repeatedly, of their fragility. You're so strong given everything you've been through, they'll say, implying that without them the target might crumble again. The suggestion is clear. You survived, but only because I'm here. The target, grateful and fearful, begins to believe it. They internalize the idea that their healing is conditional, that their worth is conditional, that their love must be earned, not received. Some seducers even provoke emotional distress intentionally, reopening old wounds through subtle triggers, gaslighting, or calculated emotional distance, only to soothe the pain they themselves caused. This creates a paradox. The seducer becomes both the poison and the antidote, and in that loop the target becomes addicted, not to love, but to survival. They begin to crave the highs of attention because they are plunged into lows of rejection. The emotional damage becomes currency, the brokenness becomes a contract, and yet what makes this method so powerful is its invisibility. Outsiders often see the seducer as caring, even noble. The target appears devoted, thankful, healed. But beneath the surface is a quiet devastation, the erosion of self, the confusion between love and control. The target may even defend the seducer fiercely, believing they were saved. That's the final seal on the manipulation, gratitude as armor for abuse. Let us be clear, this is not mere emotional influence. This is psychological colonization. To exploit insecurity is to take someone's deepest fears and turn them into shackles. It is to wrap control in the language of care, to disguise domination as devotion. It is to make someone believe that being controlled is being loved. So why does it work? Because humans are wired to seek healing in others. We look for reflections of ourselves, for validation, for safety. When we are emotionally damaged, we are more receptive, more open, more trusting of anyone who offers understanding. The dark seducer doesn't fix the wound. They offer the illusion of healing and then build a prison around it. The mastery of this technique requires a chilling level of emotional intelligence. The seducer must be able to identify subtle signs of trauma, mirror emotional states, use language with surgical precision, and monitor reactions constantly. They must read vulnerability like a map and use it as a battlefield. And they must do all of this while maintaining the facade of kindness. The cruelty must be invisible. The control must feel like care, and the chains must resemble arms. But there is also a warning here for the seducer. To play with brokenness is to risk becoming broken. When one lives in manipulation long enough, they begin to lose their own emotional compass. Empathy becomes a mask, intimacy a strategy, and eventually, the seducer may find themselves unable to form true connections, locked in a world of mirrors where every gesture is calculation. In seeking power through pain, they become prisoners of their own performance. In the end, broken wings is not just a strategy, it is a test of darkness. To see someone bleeding and use that blood as ink for your own story is to cross a line that can never be uncrossed. It is the deepest layer of dark seduction, where love is a leash, healing is a trick, and the broken are taught to kneel before the hand that claims to lift them up. And yet, in this twisted dance, the seducer wins, so long as the target never learns to fly again. So the final lesson is this: if you must lead the broken, lead them to freedom. Otherwise, you are not a seducer, you are a captor. And broken wings, though quiet, remember the sky. Chapter 13. The Puppeteer's Code. Subtle Dominance Techniques. In the dim theater of manipulation and seduction, there exists a figure rarely seen but deeply felt, a puppeteer who controls not through force, but through finesse. This chapter is not about overt authority or tyrannical command. It is about subtlety, nuance, and the quiet application of dominance that becomes indistinguishable from desire. The puppeteer does not need to raise their voice, issue threats, or impose ultimatums. Instead, they pull strings others do not realize exist, orchestrating emotional, psychological, and behavioral responses as if by instinct. And those ensnared, believing themselves free, dance willingly within invisible threads. Subtle dominance is the art of control without confrontation. It is the power to lead without seeming to lead, to bend others to your will while making them believe it was their idea. It's not about imposing a regime, but about crafting a reality. The puppeteer never plays every card. They only play enough to make the opponent fold willingly. Where brute dominance creates rebellion, subtle dominance breeds dependency. 1. May resist a tyrant, but who resists the hand that strokes their ego while quietly guiding their every move? At the core of the puppeteer's code lies one golden principle: perception is power. People do not follow actual strength. They follow perceived strength, perceived certainty, and perceived superiority. The puppeteer therefore crafts a persona so composed, so effortlessly in control, that others naturally fall into line. They communicate dominance not through volume but through calm. In silence, they control the tempo. In stillness, they control the atmosphere. Every gesture, every pause, every word is calculated, not to intimidate but to seduce compliance. One of the most powerful techniques within this framework is controlled ambiguity. The puppeteer reveals only fragments of thought and emotion, keeping others slightly off balance, never quite sure where they stand. This uncertainty fuels a desire for validation. The target, anxious for reassurance or approval, begins to chase clarity. But clarity never fully arrives. Instead, the puppeteer offers crumbs of affection, half-promises, suggestive pauses, all engineered to increase emotional investment without ceding power. Think of it as emotional gravity. The puppeteer does not pull hard, they simply become the center of orbit. Others revolve around them, drawn by the mystery, the allure, the need to decode what is intentionally undecipherable. Subtle dominance thrives in this fog. People are more obedient when they are unsure, more loyal when they feel the need to earn your affection. That effort to figure you out becomes the cage. Another critical mechanism is the use of delayed gratification. The puppeteer controls time. They offer rewards, attention, affection, validation, not when expected, but when it serves their purpose. In doing so, they rewire emotional responses. The target begins to associate pleasure with obedience, silence with punishment. They learn to anticipate the puppeteer's needs, to adjust their behavior for approval. This isn't domination by force, it's domination by conditioning. Pavlov would understand it well. The puppeteer is also a master of narrative control. They tell stories, not always directly, but through implication, metaphor, and personal anecdote, that frame reality in ways that influence belief and behavior. They don't say, "You should be loyal to me." Instead, they tell a story about betrayal and how it shattered their trust. The target, empathizing with the pain, internalizes the message. I must not betray them. Every anecdote is a lesson wrapped in emotion. Every memory is a manual of expectations. Tone modulation is another instrument in the puppeteer's arsenal. They understand how to use voice like a conductor's baton, soft when intimacy is required, firm when boundaries must be reinforced. They speak slowly, deliberately, controlling pace to force others into their rhythm. A moment of silence before a response creates tension. A sudden drop in tone can cause anxiety. These subtle shifts in delivery influence emotional state, often subconsciously. The puppeteer does not command. They simply create a soundscape that evokes the desired compliance. Proximity and space are similarly manipulated. The puppeteer controls who gets close and when. They lean in when they want vulnerability, lean back when they want to create longing. They use touch sparingly with strategic precision, a hand on the shoulder during a moment of weakness, a gentle brush of the fingers when making a point. Touch, used correctly, bypasses intellect and taps directly into the limbic system, binding emotion to presence. It's never random, it's always calculated. The puppeteer also excels in mirroring, not just behavior, but values, language patterns, and emotional frequency. At first, they reflect what the target wants to see. This creates rapport, trust, and identification. The target feels seen, heard, understood. But over time, the puppeteer subtly introduces their own values, their own truths, as if they were shared discoveries. The shift is so gradual that the target often doesn't notice it. What begins as alignment ends in assimilation. What separates the puppeteer from the average manipulator is long-term vision. While others seek short-term gain, the puppeteer plays the long game. They know when to retreat, when to concede, and when to act indifferent. They allow the target to feel powerful when it suits the plan. Letting them win becomes a tactic, because every false victory further entangles the target in the illusion of freedom. The puppeteer understands that true control is not about being dominant at every moment. It's about being necessary in every moment. Jealousy is another subtle tool, not wielded directly, but planted. The puppeteer may mention someone else's admiration, evoke past lovers, or hint at options without confirming them. The goal is not to incite rage, but to awaken competition, to trigger insecurity. Suddenly, the target begins to fight for attention, becoming more pliable, more performative. And the puppeteer, always calm, appears unmoved. Because appearing uninvested increases their perceived value. After all, what is more desirable than someone others want, but who chooses you? But with all their control, the puppeteer is never careless. Their dominance must always feel effortless. The moment it appears calculated, the illusion breaks. That's why subtlety is key. The target must feel like they're in control, even as every move is choreographed. Like a marionette who believes they're dancing by choice, unaware of the strings that guide each step. There is also the strategic use of contradiction. The puppeteer may be warm one moment and cold the next, attentive one day and elusive the next. This inconsistency creates obsession. The brain tries to find patterns in chaos, and when it cannot, it becomes fixated. The target begins to attribute meaning to randomness, searching for answers, seeking alignment. They don't realize that the confusion is intentional. It creates a state of emotional dependency, where the only stable element is the puppeteer themselves. This tactic, called intermittent reinforcement, has been proven in behavioral psychology to be the most addictive form of conditioning. It's why slot machines are so compelling. You never know when the reward is coming, but the possibility keeps you playing. The puppeteer applies this not to money, but to affection, praise, love, approval, all given unpredictably, all creating craving. Yet perhaps the most powerful string the puppeteer pulls is identity. By slowly shaping how the target sees themselves, through labels, nicknames, and reflections, they become the architect of self-perception. "You're strong," they say after compliance. "You're not like the others," they whisper after submission. These affirmations are not compliments. They are instructions. The target internalizes them and behaves accordingly, trying to maintain the version of themselves that the puppeteer reflects. In doing so, the puppeteer controls not just action, but being. The dance is no longer about what the target does. It's about who they think they are. And once identity is shaped, behavior becomes automatic. There is no resistance, because the target believes they are acting on their own. But here, a darker question arises. Does the puppeteer care? Or are they simply playing a game of power? In truth, the puppeteer may begin with detachment, but prolonged control often breeds fascination. They watch their subjects not with affection, but with curiosity, like an artist studying their creation. And yet, this too is part of the code. Never become emotionally entangled. Attachment clouds judgment. Emotional investment risks exposure. The puppeteer remains above, always watching, never touched. To master subtle dominance is to move through the world like a shadow, felt, not seen, obeyed, not questioned. It is the apex of psychological control, where the strings are invisible, and the dance appears spontaneous. But remember, even the most skillful puppeteer must remain vigilant. Strings can tangle, puppets can wake, and every performance, no matter how masterful, eventually ends. In the final silence of the show, the question lingers: who was really in control? Perhaps the puppeteer was just another puppet, dancing to a darker rhythm they could no longer name. Chapter 14. The Vanishing Act, Withdrawing to Ignite Obsession. In the world of dark seduction, nothing is more intoxicating than absence. Silence echoes louder than declarations of love. An unanswered message cuts deeper than a cruel word. When strategically applied, disappearance becomes a weapon, a psychological scalpel that carves out space in the mind of the target, forcing obsession to take root. This is the Vanishing Act, the calculated withdrawal designed not to end a connection, but to deepen it. The seducer doesn't vanish to escape, they vanish to dominate. True power in any relationship lies in emotional control, and withdrawal is the ultimate proof of it. By removing yourself from the stage, you leave the audience longing for your return. You interrupt the rhythm you once created, destabilizing expectations and amplifying your perceived value. Like a flame that flutters and threatens to go out, your absence stirs panic because what once felt certain now feels fragile. This tactic hinges on one psychological truth. People crave most what they feel they are losing. In relationships, romantic, emotional, or otherwise, predictability breeds complacency. The heart grows numb to what is constantly available, but take it away and suddenly its value skyrockets. A text left on read is more haunting than one never sent. A voice that used to speak daily, now silent, becomes a ghost that haunts the mind. In this void, desire grows wild and untamed. The vanishing act is not abandonment. It is not passive neglect. It is precision. The seducer calculates exactly when to step back. Not too early, when attachment is shallow, and not too late, when emotional control has been lost. It is deployed when interest is blooming, when emotional investment is forming, when the target is just beginning to feel tethered. That is when withdrawal can be most devastating. The absence becomes an unanswered question. Where did they go, and why? This question is the gateway to obsession. The mind cannot resist a mystery. It must fill in gaps, explain the silence, justify the disappearance. And in doing so, the target begins to reframe their perception of you, not as someone they casually liked, but as someone they now need to understand, reclaim, possess. The act of withdrawal, when done artfully, rebrands the seducer from a person to a puzzle. And people do not forget puzzles, they solve them, sometimes forever. Consider how a drug works. The first dose creates euphoria. Continued access breeds tolerance. But suddenly take the drug away and the brain screams in protest. This is withdrawal, both literal and emotional. The seducer acts as the drug, delivering dopamine through charm, affection, attention. Then, cold withdrawal. No explanation, no drama, just absence. The result is emotional withdrawal in the target, complete with cravings, anxiety, and irrational thinking. They may replay conversations, reread messages, analyze every detail to find out why. In doing so, they invest more and more of themselves into the void you've created. The more they invest, the harder it becomes to detach. But to succeed, the vanishing act must be paired with a strong setup. You must first create emotional dependency through contrast, hot and cold, closeness and distance, intensity and restraint. Give them a taste of depth, then disappear. This isn't just silence, it's interruption. You are interrupting an emotional pattern. And this interruption triggers the brain's fear response. The amygdala, responsible for detecting threats, sounds the alarm. Something is wrong. You were once there, and now you're not. This emotional threat intensifies the connection. It doesn't matter how brief the relationship was. If the emotional spike was sharp enough, the withdrawal will feel like loss. The seducer understands this. You are not aiming for affection. You are engineering obsession. There is also a deeper psychological principle at work. Object permanence. Just as infants cry when their caregiver leaves the room, believing they are truly gone, adults too can be triggered by sudden absence. The difference is that adults intellectualize it, they rationalize, they overthink, and this, paradoxically, makes it worse. Emotional pain disguised as thought becomes a labyrinth from which the target cannot easily escape. The vanishing act also serves to shift power. Before the disappearance, the dynamic may have been balanced, or even leaning in the target's favor, but the withdrawal upends that. Now they are pursuing. Now they are wondering. Now they are vulnerable. The seducer becomes the prize, not by showcasing superiority, but by simply removing access. The illusion of scarcity enhances desire. It's supply and demand applied to human connection, but the timing must be perfect. Vanish too soon, and you appear flaky. Vanish too long, and they may forget. The vanishing act is like pulling a bowstring. You disappear just long enough to build tension. When you return, you release the arrow, and the result is impact. Heightened attraction, amplified curiosity, and deeper submission. You become more alluring because you are not always available. The idea that you can vanish again becomes both thrilling and terrifying to the target. A skilled seducer may vanish without explanation. Others may offer vague reasons. I needed space. I've been thinking. Things have been intense. These phrases don't close the door. They leave it ajar. They allow the target to project, to hope, to believe that the connection isn't broken. It's just paused. And in that pause, they suffer. They yearn. They crave the return of the presence that made them feel alive. What's most important is how you return. The comeback must feel like a reward, a gift. Not a mistake or a moment of weakness, but a deliberate choice. You reappear with emotional gravity, as if no time has passed, as if you were always watching, always aware. The return must not be apologetic, but sovereign. The seducer does not explain their disappearance, they allow reconnection, and in doing so they deepen their control. Now the target is emotionally conditioned. They fear your absence, so they adjust their behavior to prevent another disappearance. They become more available, more compliant, more eager to please. This is where the true power of the vanishing act is revealed. It does not simply create longing, it programs behavior. The fear of losing you becomes a behavioral anchor. But beware, this technique is not without risk. If executed poorly, it can backfire. If the initial bond wasn't strong enough, your withdrawal may be seen as disinterest. The target may walk away, conclude the seduction has ended, and move on. This is why emotional investment before the withdrawal is key. You must establish presence. Only then can your absence matter. Additionally, if the target has high self-worth or a secure attachment style, they may respond to disappearance with detachment. The vanishing act works best on those with anxious tendencies, those who equate love with uncertainty, and who chase what eludes them. Know your audience. Not every mind is vulnerable to this magic. And finally, remember, repetition dulls the blade. If you vanish too often, it loses power. If your disappearances become predictable, they lose impact. The vanishing act should be used sparingly, strategically. Each withdrawal should feel significant, not habitual. In dark seduction, obsession is more powerful than affection, and absence is often more potent than presence. The vanishing act is not about creating space. It's about creating hunger. It's not about being missed. It's about being needed. When done right, you become more than a person. You become a phantom presence, always lingering in thought, always just out of reach. A ghost they keep chasing, never realizing the chains that bind them are ones they forged themselves. That is the brilliance of the vanishing act. Not that you left, but that they can never stop hoping you'll come back. Chapter 15. The Final Spell. Binding their heart in invisible chains. In the intricate dance of dark seduction, there comes a moment when the seducer seeks not just attention or affection, but complete emotional possession. This is the culmination of a meticulously orchestrated series of psychological maneuvers. A final spell that binds the target's heart in invisible chains. Unlike overt declarations of love or grand romantic gestures, this binding is subtle, insidious, and profoundly effective. It ensures that the target's thoughts, emotions, and desires are inextricably linked to the seducer, often without their conscious awareness. The foundation of this binding lies in the gradual erosion of the target's autonomy. Through a combination of positive reinforcement, such as praise, affection, and attention, and negative reinforcement, like withdrawal, silence, or subtle disapproval, the seducer conditions the target to seek validation exclusively from them. This dynamic creates a dependency wherein the target's self-worth becomes contingent upon the seducer's approval, making them more susceptible to manipulation. Central to this process is the strategic use of intermittent reinforcement. By unpredictably alternating between warmth and coldness, the seducer keeps the target in a state of emotional uncertainty. This unpredictability heightens the target's focus on the seducer, as they become preoccupied with deciphering the reasons behind the fluctuating behavior. The resulting anxiety and desire for stability drive the target to invest more deeply in the relationship, further entrenching their emotional entanglement. Another potent tool in the seducer's arsenal is gaslighting, a form of psychological manipulation that causes the target to question their perceptions and memories. By consistently denying or distorting facts, the seducer undermines the target's confidence in their judgment, fostering a reliance on the seducer for reality validation. This dependency not only facilitates control but also reinforces the emotional bond, as the target increasingly turns to the seducer for guidance and affirmation. Emotional blackmail further tightens the invisible chains. By exploiting the target's fears, obligations, and guilt, the seducer coerces compliance and deepens the emotional grip. For instance, the seducer might imply that any attempt to distance oneself would result in emotional harm to the seducer, thereby manipulating the target into maintaining the connection out of a sense of responsibility or fear of causing pain. The culmination of these tactics is a state wherein the target's identity becomes enmeshed with the seducer's influence. The target may find themselves adopting the seducer's viewpoints, preferences, and even behaviors, often at the expense of their individuality. This transformation is not the result of overt coercion but of a gradual, almost imperceptible shift, facilitated by the seducer's calculated strategies. In essence, the final spell is not a singular act, but the result of a sustained campaign of psychological manipulation. It is the artful weaving of dependency, uncertainty, and identity erosion that binds the target's heart in invisible chains. Recognizing these tactics is crucial for individuals to safeguard their autonomy and emotional well-being in the face of such covert manipulation. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with others who might find it helpful. Your support means everything and helps this channel grow and reach more people. And if you'd like to go even further in supporting the channel, consider joining as a member to get exclusive content and behind-the-scenes insights.